The floorboards creak under your feet with every step you take. There's barely any light in this narrow hallway as small candles flicker on their sconces on the walls. The air is cold, damp, and deafeningly silent, save for the sound of your footsteps and every breath you take. As you open the door at the end of the hallway, you find yourself in a beautifully decorated room where there's an old wooden piano, majestic candelabra, and many portraits on each of the walls. Out of all the paintings you see, there is one that sends shivers down your spine. The face of this man is long, with piercing, deep-set eyes, long black hair, and a mustache. He's wearing an imposing crown on his head. What is it about this man that's so strange and frightening? Are you sure you want to know? Welcome to Bran Castle, an architectural jewel hidden in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania. Or, as you might know it from its more popular name, Dracula's Castle. Though, by all accounts, Vlad III of Wallachia was indeed quite a special kind of ruler, not all the things that were attributed to him were actually true. For example, he never actually lived here in this castle. But his true legacy was what inspired the British author Bram Stoker to create the now famous character Dracula in his book of the same name, published in 1897. Safe to say, Stoker might have gone a bit overboard with the story, given that he never actually visited Bran Castle. Just to be clear, it's Bran Castle with an N and Bram Stoker with an M. Odd coincidence, I'm sure. This building, however, remains to this day a source of intrigue and mystery for tourists, coming from all over the world to see intriguing things like a secret passageway that used to be hidden behind a fireplace. Speaking of intriguing, Larna Castle in New Zealand has an equally spooky vibe to it, to say nothing of its architectural beauty. Legend says that the initial owner, named William Larna, built a 3,000 square foot ballroom here for his favorite daughter, Kate, on her 21st birthday. Visitors here have experienced all sorts of weird phenomena. So much so that the building was once even visited by special paranormal investigators. Some castles have such a frightening atmosphere, they even make it to the big screen, like Casa Loma, located in Toronto, Canada. It is a Gothic-style castle that was featured in at least 4 Hollywood movies. Sure, that's partly due to the wonderful architecture there, but there's also years' worth of reported unusual sightings in the area, which add to the mystery. Burg Eltz, a castle located in Germany that dates back to 1157, also made our list of enigmatic buildings. It has only a limited number of rooms that are available for the public, but out of all of them, there is one that generates a lot of buzz between tourists. It is the bedroom of Countess Agnes, who lived here in the 15th century. Her bed and part of her attire are still on display in the room. This castle has been used as an important landmark in various video games because of its particular style, which looks more like a fortress. Also in Germany, there's an interesting construction named Frankenstein Castle. That's right, it's the palace that inspired Mary Shelley's renowned novel of the same name. And more than that, a lot of Gothic and Romantic literature at the time. The name comes from the ancient Germanic tribe called the Franks, and Stein, which is German for stone, a common German naming convention. About an hour north of Prague in the Czech Republic, there is a castle that's interesting, to say the least. It has no kitchen, no fortifications, and legend says that at the time that it was finished building, nobody wanted to live there. That's probably because Hauska Castle is built on top of a very large hole in the ground, which, according to legend, is bottomless. Maybe. Who knows? Japan has a mysterious castle of its own called Himeji Castle that dates all the way back to the year 1333. It's one of the best remaining samples of feudal Japanese architecture, featuring many of its classic staples like its use of wood and multiple sliding doors. The castle is deeply connected to local folklore, specifically to the story of Okiku, a girl that was falsely accused of losing some valuable dishes and was punished for it, but now haunts the castle as a spirit seeking vengeance. The Castle of Good Hope in South Africa doesn't inspire a lot of hope in its visitors, despite its name, maybe because it supposedly features a bell that rings by itself? Or perhaps because lights there often switch on and off by themselves too. I guess we'll never know. Have you ever heard the Italian legend about a little girl with blue hair? Then you might have heard about the enticing Montebello Castle north of Milan. The story says her mother used to dye her hair with various herbs that gave that particular shade of blue to her hair. Because of her looks, she was nicknamed Azzurrina, as azzurro means light blue in Italian. It is also said that she wasn't allowed to ever leave the castle and was always under constant supervision of her parents and castle guards. Who knows? She might still be there to this day. Now, if you're looking to actually stay in one of these chilling castles, you may want to consider Castle Rzeszów, located in the city of the same name in Poland. Since it's now being used as a hotel, it attracts a lot of tourists looking for that magical, regal experience. Just make sure to book a room as far away from the former dungeons as possible. Just saying. This one you've probably already heard of, and maybe even visited, since it's one of the most famous British landmarks, the Tower of London. Because throughout its history, which dates back to the 11th century, this construction was used for a lot of different things, from royal residencies to prisons, it is indeed associated with a lot of unusual happenings. One of the most notable stories is that of the famous Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII and mother of Elizabeth I. A tale of tragedy in the face of political intrigue. Coningsborough Castle in South Yorkshire is an equally impressive structure, sporting a beautiful view over South Yorkshire itself. Don't be fooled by the magnificent sightings, though, as many visitors have reported getting the feeling of strange gusts of wind blowing by them every now and then. For all you dog lovers out there, Norway has a castle especially for you. Akershus Castle was built around the year 1300, and its most fascinating story is that of a magical dog named Malkanism that was said to have guarded the gates of the castle, so much so that people could hardly ever approach its grounds. This next one has to be one of the most beautiful castles in the world, and you've surely seen it in posters, on TV, and maybe even on Instagram. Mont Saint-Michel is located on an island off the coast of Normandy and was built in the 8th century. It's not only a masterpiece because of its location and architecture, but it's also an important symbol of French history. However, people don't just come here to marvel at its beauty. They come to find out for themselves about the many strange rumors that it's cultivated over the years. If you want to visit this one, though, it's a bit tricky. The whole structure is built on a shallow bay that floods with water in the high tide and recedes on the low. These tides alternate roughly once every 6 hours, so you need to plan your visit carefully if you don't want to end up stranded for hours. The Slovenian fortress Predjama is not only renowned for its spook factor, but it's also part of the Guinness Book of Records as the largest cave castle in the world. It has stood proud in the middle of a 403-foot-high cliff for the past 800 years. Talk about adding suspense. Apart from its obviously unique location, it's also famous for the various secret tunnels that were built to provide safe passage in and out of the castle. It's also home to a colony of bats. You know, lots of people are afraid of them, but they're actually very sweet. Another one of those places that you can actually book a room in is Dalhousie Castle in Scotland. Its spooky rooms, walls, and corridors tell the myth of a tragic love story between a girl named Lady Catherine and a stable boy. A woeful tale that sounds like it comes straight out of a romance novel. Despite its reputation, the hotel is quite a popular destination for weddings. At many of these events, people have reported seeing strange silhouettes in their wedding photos. Still, it looks like a lovely venue to book an event. If you don't mind strangers showing up in your pictures, of course. Aren't castles truly fascinating? Not only are they just beautiful to look at, both inside and out, but they provide such a timeless glimpse into the history of ages long past. Of course, with all the rumors of ghosts and hauntings, it's hard to tell what is true and what isn't. But I like to think that the prevalence of these rumors speaks to the very human spirit of curiosity that's inside all of us, the desire to learn and to explore. And that, in and of itself, is truly special. Be sure to stay curious and watch your step.
Hello, distinguished guests, and welcome to the Middle Ages. We're honored by thy presence. Sorry for the bumpy ride. It's not easy traveling in a cart. But the other two options you had were either riding a horse or simply walking. Oh well, that's medieval times for you. No highways around here. Anyway, I'm Constable Bright, and I'll be your guide through this castle tour. Now, forget everything you've learned about castles, especially those from princess movies, because I have prepared so many jaw-dropping castle secrets for you. Time to pass through the gate. After you. I want to begin our tour by correcting a misconception. Castles have often been confused with palaces or fortresses. However, unlike both of them, they were built with one specific purpose in mind. A castle is considered to be a fortified residence of an important person. On the other hand, palaces were not fortified, and fortresses didn't really serve residential purposes. European-style castles came into existence around the 9th and 10th centuries. During this time, you probably wouldn't want to live in Europe since it fell into chaos after the fall of the empires. The land was divided between lords, princes, or noble people of any kind. And now they have to find a way to control and protect their territories, so they began building castles. Much like the pillow fortresses you and your siblings built to protect your corners of the living room back when you were kids, but on a larger scale. However, aside from their original purpose of defending the land, castles also served as centers of administration and symbols of power. Precisely, urban castles were used to control the local population in addition to important travel routes. The earliest castles were actually made of wood. However, they eventually proved to be not so great for protecting the land. First of all, they usually relied on one central keep. Also, they would easily be burnt to the ground. That is one of the reasons why you can't visit a wooden castle museum today, as well as the fact that they're probably long rotten. Wooden castles were later replaced by stone ones as they were more sturdy. However, they had their disadvantages too. They were more expensive as well as time-consuming to construct. If you were swimming in gold and silver, then kudos to you. But again, you would still have to wait around 10 years for your castle to be completed, since the whole process included the stones being quarried and brought in. Remember, there were no diggers, cranes, or bulldozers to make things easier. As you can imagine, the first stone castles were cold, dark, smelly, and damp. To get rid of at least the smell, they would use sweet-smelling herbs to cover the walls and floors. Contrary to what representations of castles in popular culture may have led you to believe, earlier castles were not actually that big. Many of them consisted of just a single watchtower and had one room or two rooms if the owner was feeling fancy and had the money. When it came to building a castle, the location was strategically more important than the design. These structures would often be built on hard-to-reach places, such as islands, hill forts, or next to the sea so that they would have some natural protection as well. Such location choices also allowed the castle's residents to see for miles around them and spot and prepare for any dangers to come. So the more the castle was secluded and inaccessible, the better it was. But those without such natural defenses would be surrounded by ditches or moats for that extra layer of protection. In such cases, access to the castle would be granted via a drawbridge. However, in addition to being as secluded as possible, castles would have to be situated near features that were integral for survival, such as mills, fertile land, or a freshwater source. Now, let's talk about the gate and the stone outer walls for a while before we head inside. You might think that the central keep would be the most important part of a castle structure, but it's actually the gatehouse that needed to be protected at all costs, because it was also the weakest part that provided a straight path into the courtyard. That's why it would have to be as small as possible to stop any unwanted visitors. So, those massive gates you see in fantasy movies are actually unrealistic and impractical, since in reality, they would make the castle harder to defend. When it comes to the towers you see on every side of the castle walls, an upgrade to the design proved to be necessary over time. As it happened, the earlier castles had square towers. Yet, it was quite easy to destroy them. One simply would have to dig tunnels under the corners and they would collapse. That's why castle builders switched to round towers. It's time for us to take a step inside the keep now, which is the central building inside the castle. This was where the most important people lived, like the lords and ladies, as well as their guests, representatives, and sometimes even servants. The lord and lady would sleep in their chamber. That is, if they were one of the richer nobles to have more than one room in their castles. The others, on the other hand, would have to sleep in the Great Hall, which would also be used as the dining area. The funny thing is castles normally didn't have dungeons, at least not in a way you would think. The word dungeon is actually derived from the French word donjon, which means a keep. So, in reality, instead of being a prison, dungeons acted as the last places for the castle inhabitants to take shelter in case other outer defenses fell in the face of a threat. I bet your eyes caught the spiral stairs now, right? They were built that way for safety reasons. The clockwise direction of the staircase was meant to make it harder for an invader coming up the stairs to draw their swords, since it would be along the interior curve of the wall. This is all considering that their right hand was their sword hand, of course. On the other hand, anyone coming down the stairs would have an advantage because their sword hand would be on the outside of the wall, and they would have more room to swing. Ascending clockwise would also mean that the invader would be exposing more of their body in order to get their sword, hence making it easier for the defender to ward off their swings. In addition to that, stairs would be designed with uneven steps. Some would be taller and others would be shorter. This would allow people who were familiar with the castle to move quickly and cause invaders to stumble and fall. In case emergency situations escalated, castles had secret entrances and exits as well. The main concealed door would be called the postern, or the sally port, and would traditionally lie at the base of the castle's wall. It would often be small and easy to defend, as well as secured with metal grates. It held great importance when it came to allowing people to escape or bring in food and other supplies during sieges. You might need to use the bathroom before our tour ends, but sorry to inform you that there are no toilets around here. The most toilet-like thing you would get in a castle would be a room with a hole that led out to the moat surrounding the walls. These rooms would be called garderobes, and as you can imagine, they would smell terrible. That is why people would also use them as wardrobes with the idea that the odor would keep insects away and prevent them from damaging their clothes. So I suggest you wait until you're back at your modern home to take care of your business. Fare thee well, traveler. Back in the 12th and 13th centuries, Bologna used to look like modern-day Manhattan. No one knows exactly how many towers resembling skyscrapers it used to have, but the most likely number is at least 100. The tallest of them was around the same height as Big Ben. When the towers were built, Bologna was one of the largest cities in Europe. Construction projects were massive and ambitious. Someone built cathedrals and town halls, and the richest noble families also erected towers, possibly as a symbol of status and wealth. There was no place in the city center to build grand castles, so they had to go up with the construction. They didn't actually live in those towers, but in smaller structures next to them. The towers served for defensive purposes. It took between 3 and 10 years of work to build one tower, and it was a really tedious process. Each of them had a steady foundation deep underground and a base made of big blocks of selenite stone. The rest of the tower was becoming thinner and lighter the higher it went. In the 13th century, they demolished many of the towers, and others just collapsed by themselves. Some of them were later reused as city towers, shops, or residential buildings. Now you can see only 22 towers still standing in the center of Bologna. 2 of them have become the unofficial symbol of the city, mentioned in every guidebook. Another historical surprise coming from Italy is that gladiators weren't only male. Gladiatrix were rare, but they did exist. There's evidence that several women took part in Rome's public games. In ancient texts, these women were often called ludia, or mulieres, but not ladies. Some scholars think it means that it was mostly lower-class women in the arena. The term gladiatrix wasn't used in ancient times. It was first coined in the 1800s. Women who chose to become gladiators seemed to do so for independence, fame, financial rewards, and probably debt remission. They were most likely honored like male gladiators. All this was a bit tricky to accept in Roman society at that time, and women's roles in it. At the beginning of the current era, the Roman Senate passed a law prohibiting free-born women under 20 from taking part in arena games. Emperor Septimus Severus banned all women from the arena in the year 200 of the current era. He was probably afraid that women might want to compete in the Olympic Games. It would seriously mess up the existing social order. Pineapples were once the equivalent of designer bags and watches today, a symbol of wealth and status in Britain. You can still see them at the top of the western towers of St. Paul's Cathedral, one of the most famous landmarks of London. Explorers who came back from the Americas described pineapples with so much enthusiasm that everyone was dreaming about trying the king of fruits, as it was called. Pineapples need very high temperatures and years to mature. And despite the cold and rainy climate of England and Scotland, you could see pineapples growing in any wealthy country house garden by the end of the 18th century. They even installed special greenhouses called pineries with heating systems. A single pineapple was worth up to 80 pounds, which is about $15,000 today. Of course, people would hardly eat this expensive beauty, but send it as a gift or display on a dining table until it would rot. Folks who couldn't afford to buy a pineapple would sometimes rent one to show off wealth at a party. The king of fruits became a part of various designs and tableware for the rich. Stone pineapples on gateposts and the pineapple atop the Wimbledon trophy are living memories of that time. Around 1820, there were so many pineapples imported from abroad that they started losing their luxury status. 100 million years ago, there were giant crocodiles living in the Sahara Desert. In the 1990s, paleontologists found fossilized skeletons of primitive crocodiles, including the so-called supercroc. They discovered several partial skeletons from 110 million years ago. This prehistoric giant with a head as large as an adult human was about 40 feet long. That's about 2 times as tall as a giraffe. The croc thrived both in water and on land as part of a diverse ecosystem of ancient North Africa. The expeditions to the Sahara found a whole lost world of ancient crocodiles, with some species that resembled modern animals. One of them was the dog croc. With its tall legs and keen sense of smell, it moved through the surroundings, much like a dog. Another fascinating find was the duck croc, a 3-foot-long crocodile with duck-billed platypus-like features. It was adapted for life on land rather than water. And then there was also the rat croc, a small 2-foot-long crocodile. This species had front teeth, perfect for digging up insects. These prehistoric creatures were more agile, active, and probably more intelligent than today's crocs, who are passive hunters. If noise-canceling headphones had been invented in the 19th century, they would have come in really handy. On the 27th of August 1883, the island of Krakatoa in Indonesia experienced a catastrophic eruption. It produced what is believed to be the loudest sound ever recorded. As Krakatoa collapsed, it triggered tsunamis with waves reaching 151 feet that traveled as far as South Africa. Krakatoa was an uninhabited volcanic island that hadn't erupted for 2 centuries before this terrible day. The eruption took the lives of over 30,000 people and caused extreme fluctuations in air pressure, perceived as sound. A barometer at a gasworks 100 miles from Krakatoa recorded 172 decibels. An average human can withstand up to 130 decibels of sound without getting in serious trouble. This intense pressure ruptured the eardrums of sailors on the British ship Norham Castle, which was 40 miles away from Krakatoa. The sound wave from it circled the globe, and people could still hear it even 3,000 miles away, where it resembled cannon fire. The late 1800s were a golden era for grand mustaches. But there was one problem. You couldn't enjoy a cup of tea with this kind of facial hairstyle. The heat from the tea would melt mustache wax and make the ends droop. Fine gentlemen had to struggle because of it until the invention of the mustache cup. Harvey Adams, a British potter, likely invented the mustache cup in the 1870s. He patented a butterfly-shaped ledge inside the cup with a hole to sip through. Thanks to it, the mustache didn't get wet. These cups quickly became a hit, first in the UK and then across Europe. In the United States, they were sold at stores like Sears and Marshall Field's, now part of Macy's. Mustache cups came in various shapes and sizes. Some, like farmers' cups, could hold up to a pint of tea. Others were smaller porcelain pieces shaped like conch shells or decorated with the owner's name. They often came with matching saucers. Lord Byron, one of the greatest British poets, kept numerous dogs and cats and a whole bunch of exotic animals. There was a monkey, a crocodile, a fox, peacocks, a bear, and several badgers. When Byron attended Trinity College, Cambridge, college rules prohibited keeping dogs on the grounds. He got really angry and decided to go around the rules. Byron brought a tame bear as his pet. The college authorities argued with him, but since the statutes did not specifically mention bears, they had no legal grounds to remove either the bear or its owner. Byron walked the bear on a chain, talked to it, and even considered applying for the bear to become a student at the college. We still don't know how and where Byron got the bear, but when he left Cambridge, he took the bear with him to his estate in London.
This is Alex. He's a regular, normal guy, working a 9-to-5 job. He doesn't make an impressive 6 figures a year, and he could only afford a used Honda, even though he's always been dreaming about something more extravagant. And this is Henry, but it's more correct to pronounce his name as Henri, since he's French. You might have noticed from his clothes that he's 1. Old-fashioned, and 2. Quite rich. Yep, you're looking at Henry II of France, a medieval monarch straight from the 16th century who could afford anything he wanted back then. And he's not old-fashioned. He actually looks pretty edgy for his time. Sure, Alex and Henry never met, and will never meet each other. After all, they're from different time periods, and their statuses are pretty different too. But what if I tell you that Alex leads a way more luxurious life than Henry II of France? This one may not sound too convincing, but any of you who's watching this video leads a more luxurious life than a medieval king. Let's dive in. Royal carriages seem romantic and all, but no matter how advanced a carriage was in medieval times, it will never be a decent rival even for the rustiest and most decaying car of today. I'm not speaking about AC, car audio systems, and other fancy features. It's more about the quality of the roads and the overall comfort. Modern suspension works wonders, And even though there's evidence many carriages back then did have suspension systems, they still can't be compared to what we have today. Next on the list is pretty obvious: medicine. Yeah, insurance today costs a pretty penny, and sometimes it's cheaper to extract a tooth than to cure it. But at least you won't be treated with the help of herbal cures. These can be good indeed, though sometimes we need something more advanced. I mean, a headache is more likely to go away with the help of a pill we have in our emergency kits at home than with the help of sweet-smelling herbs. In medieval times, curers used rose, lavender, sage, and hay to help someone with headaches. And should something more serious happen to anyone today, they'll see someone with an actual degree, not a magician. Yeah, that was pretty common in medieval times. Okay, enough about the sad things. Plus, something cool's going on right now. Alex has recently met a girl on a dating app, and it's their first date today. Henry II of France would have been terribly jealous if he had known such a thing was possible. He got married at the age of 14, and his wife was from the prosperous family of Medici. Henry couldn't simply choose any peasant girl he liked. Royalty was supposed to get married wisely, taking into account all the financial and political advantages. Seems like in terms of love, Alex from the 21st century wins. But in terms of wealth, there's no doubt it's Henry. Have you ever heard of the term usury? It's something totally normal today, but quite prohibited in the Middle Ages. Basically, usury is when someone makes money from money, aka charging interest. Usury was banned due to religious issues in many medieval places, but still, you couldn't just go get a loan from a bank. But as always, some people did find a way out, so loans technically existed. The easiest way was to issue a binding bond for, let's say, $20, while the borrower would only get $15. Voila! There's no interest mentioned on papers, but still, the borrower got the money and the loaner got their interest. So Alex would have trouble with his credit card back in medieval times, and Henry wouldn't need such a thing as a credit card. He's full of his own funds. Alright, and what about other money things? Today, we can send and receive money instantly to and from anyone. Thank you, almighty internet. But in the Middle Ages, things were pretty complicated. So a young prince couldn't text his father king, so he sent him a bit of money to cover that tavern bill. The first almost fast money transfers appeared in 1851, thanks to the invention of the telegraph and Western Union. As for taverns and food in general, trust me, the paintings showing incredible feasts sometimes exaggerate. Before Photoshop and other editing programs appeared, those were the artists themselves who retouched the painting. I mean, everyone wants to look good, even food. Going back to meals, if you fancy spices, you know it's not a big deal to find them in the closest convenience store, and they don't cost much. But back in the medieval times, they were so expensive and hard to transport that only the noblest people could afford them. Sure, kings did have access to all of them, but if they saw today's spices section in the supermarket, they'd think it's sorcery. By the way, there was even a special department at the royal court called the spicery, and it's not hard to guess that it was entirely devoted to spices. As for the main course, medieval kings would typically eat wild game, and they didn't have much of a choice. Now let's peek at a typical king's menu. First off, on the king's table, there was a stuffed chicken, a quarter of stag, and a loin of veal that was generously covered in sauce. Next, a huge meat pie adorned with smaller pies. All of that would form a crown. And for dessert, there were some jelly, cream, cheese, and strawberries stewed in rose water. That probably sounds fancy, but remember that even so, there wasn't much choice. The food highly depended on the region where the king lived. Plus, he couldn't just pick up the phone and order sushi delivery. Hey, what do you do? Anyways, no matter what we do, in most cases, modern people are often free to choose their profession. At least, we can technically do that. But a medieval king didn't have such an option. He had his royal duties. New laws? Yep, the king probably didn't have to create them himself, but he needed to approve of new ideas and implement them. Protecting the kingdom from enemies? Absolutely. And I guess that must have been tiring. I mean, even Alex is quite burnt out with his 9-to-5 job, but at least he doesn't need to plan any protection strategies, and it's not that millions of people in the kingdom depend on him. And don't forget that the king is the person who would have negotiations with foreign ambassadors, settle down new relationships, and sometimes even stop those relationships. Sounds like a lot of responsibilities. But even if all these points didn't convince you that you're way more luxurious than a medieval king, and you still want to be one, these are some pieces of advice for you on how to be a good king, just in case scientists finally invent a time machine. Number 1. Be dominant. A real king should know how to show strength and power. Nobody cares what personality you have. You need to show how potent you are, or at least fake it. Number 2. Be protective. There are a bunch of people in your kingdom looking for your help. They probably want to have an audience with you, and you gotta be caring, helpful, and generous. Generosity is a trait of a real king. At some point, it will probably seem to you that you're a kind of therapist, but having audiences is a royal duty. Number 3. Be wise while choosing people around you. Royal duties are hard, and one can hardly carry them out all on their own. So you'll need people to delegate your duties to. Like, you can't control that all the taxes were collected, and all the disputes are fairly resolved. But beware, not all trustworthy agents are that trustworthy. Some of them may even want to poison you, like King John, who was rumored to have been poisoned by a monk, even though the official records claim he passed away because of gluttony. The official version seems plausible. After all, you know a medieval king menu. So, Alex, you still want to be a king?
Once upon a time, in a teeny-tiny village up north in England, it was around 11 p.m. on the 13th of April in the year 1699. Little 9-year-old Jane Roth woke up from her first sleep and rubbed her eyes, trying to make sense of the moody evening shadows. Her mom, Mrs. Roth, hopped out of bed and headed straight to the fireplace. Just then, out of nowhere, 2 dudes popped up by the window and hollered at her to get ready for an adventure. According to Jane's later testimony in court, it seemed like her mom was expecting these mysterious visitors. She willingly went with them, but not before whispering to Jane, "Stay put, kiddo. I'll be back in the morning." Maybe her mom had some secret night mission, or maybe she was in some kind of trouble and knew leaving the house was risky business. Either way, Jane's mom never kept her promise. She never returned home. That night, something awful happened. Mrs. Roth was attacked and passed away. The crime was never solved. Fast forward almost 300 years to the early 1990s. A history enthusiast, Roger Eckerk, strolled into the public record office in London. Among the ancient vellum papers and manuscripts, Eckerk stumbled upon Jane's testimony. But there was something fishy about it that caught his attention. Originally, Eckerk was researching a book about the history of nighttime. He was knee-deep in records spanning from the Middle Ages to the Industrial Revolution. He dreaded writing the sleep chapter, thinking it would be as boring as watching paint dry. I mean, sleep is just a necessary part of life, right? He was skeptical that he'd find anything interesting. But as he dove into Jane's criminal deposition, 2 words jumped out at him. "First sleep." These words held a hint of something tantalizingly peculiar about life in the 17th century that Eckerk had never come across before. Now here's where things get interesting. If there's a first sleep, that means there's gotta be a second sleep too? Like splitting the night into 2 halves? Is this some quirky family thing, or is there more to it? Well, Eckerk went on a wild goose chase through the archives for months, and guess what? He found loads of references to this mysterious double sleeping phenomenon, or as he later dubbed it, biphasic sleep. Alright, let's time travel to see how people caught their Z's. Picture this. It's around 9 to 11 in the evening. If you were lucky enough to afford it, you'd flop onto a mattress stuffed with all sorts of interesting things like straw or rags. Fancy folks might even have feathers in there. But hey, if you were at the bottom of the social ladder, you'd have to make do with heather or even the bare earth floor. Yikes. Most people slept together in one big slumber party. Bedbugs, fleas, lice, family members, friends, servants, you name it. They were all snuggled up together. And if you were traveling, well, you might even find yourself cozying up with a total stranger. Sleeping used to be a whole production, with all these crazy rules and positions. Like, girls would be on one side of the bed with the oldest closest to the wall, followed by the parents, then the boys, and finally any random people who happened to be crashing there. Can you imagine trying to get comfortable with all those restrictions? Anyway, a few hours into the night, people would start waking up naturally. No alarms or anything, just their bodies deciding it was time to be awake. This period was called the Watch, and it was pretty productive. People would do all sorts of things under the dim moonlight and oil lamps. Peasants would use this time to get back to work. They'd check on their animals or do chores around the house. One servant even brewed drinks for her boss in the middle of the night. And of course, you had your troublemakers lurking around causing mischief. After a couple of hours awake, people would go back to bed. This morning sleep could last until dawn or even later. Just like today, when you finally wake up for good depends on when you hit the hay. This biphasic sleep thing was a worldwide phenomenon in the pre-industrial era. It was popular in France and Italy. Eckhart even discovered evidence of this sleep habit in far-flung places like Africa, South and Southeast Asia, Australia, South America, and the Middle East. Back in the medieval era, the rich folks were living it up in their fancy houses with their extravagant beds. These beds were like works of art, adorned with all sorts of decorations and made with the softest feather beds and luxurious linen sheets. They were the centerpiece of any grand house, and the noblemen even had their symbols embroidered on the hangings. Not only were these beds super comfy, but they were also the perfect spot to gather for a chat or entertain guests while showing off their fancy textiles. Now, let's take a look at 14th or 15th century France. You'll see a bed fit for a king, complete with a canopy and curtains. The pillow is covered by a head sheet, which eventually got replaced by pillowcases. Fun fact, back then, a pillowcase was called a pillow bearer. But enough about that, let's get back to the beds. In those days, they didn't have those four-poster beds with poles at each corner like we see in movies. Instead, they had hangings draped from a frame suspended from the ceiling beams. Sometimes there was even a tall bedhead and a fancy canopy called a tester or cellure. The actual bedstead was its own separate structure, surrounded by all this opulence. Some beds were so high that they even had a trundle bed underneath for a personal valet or maid. Beds and bedding were so valuable that they were passed down through generations. You'd find them mentioned in wills from as early as the 14th century. A well-to-do family might pass on one feather bed and bolster, while the wealthiest folks left behind multiple beds with expensive hangings and top-notch bedding. Even woolen mattresses were considered important enough to be bequeathed to family members. Now, let's talk about the beds in places like monasteries and almshouses. They were pretty simple, with just a mattress, blanket, coverlet, and plain pillow. In 1487, a generous soul even left money to provide sheets for the old folks' beds. They estimated that each bed would cost 13 shillings and sixpence. Peasants also saw some improvements in their sleeping arrangements by the mid-15th century. They were raised off the floor and had a few more comforts, like 3 boards for a bed, a sheet, and pillows. Sure, they might have had some worn coverlets and canvas covers, but it was a step up. By the time Queen Elizabeth I took the throne, not much had changed in the way beds were arranged. Except for the fancy four-posters in wealthy homes and a few inns, things remained pretty familiar. The head sheet disappeared, but people were still all about their cozy bedding. As the middle classes started to thrive, they too wanted feather beds and soft sheets. In fact, around 1580, a clergyman named William Harrison complained about the younger generation's obsession with feathers and pillows. Back in his day, if a man could afford a mattress and a sack of chaff to rest his head on after 7 years of marriage, he considered himself as well off as a lord. Pillows were only for sick women, and servants were lucky if they had a sheet over them to keep the straw from poking their tough hides. By the way, in the Tudor days, which is partly medieval too, people had a similar sleep routine. They would split their sleep into 2 parts, but their sleeping positions were totally wacky compared to what we do today. Sleeping flat on your back was a big no-no because it was associated with passing away, So instead, these folks would snooze in a half-upright position. Oh, how times have changed. Now we can't even imagine sleeping without our comfy beds, fluffy pillows, and soft sheets. But it's always fascinating to look back at how people used to snooze in the good old days.
They used to call this island the Paris of the East, mostly because it had beautiful buildings with large gardens and impressive stone archways. But now, it's nothing like it used to be, with all the architecture almost entirely covered in tree roots and vines. Ross Island is a small territory in the Indian Ocean. It's located east of the Indian city of Port Blair. Though initially thought of as a jail, Ross Island eventually became a luxurious resort for the local administrators. They called this island a real treat for its more privileged residents. It boasted opulent bungalows, stained glass window panels brought all the way from Italy, neatly kept gardens, tennis courts, and even swimming pools. Soon after the complex was closed in 1937, a powerful earthquake hit the island. It caused a lot of damage, making it even more uninhabitable. The island is now in the administration of India and has become a tourist attraction for people interested in abandoned towns. Pieces of German architecture still lie hidden in the Namibian desert. The city of Kolmanskop, Namibia, was a luxury location at its peak in the early 1900s when German workers settled here looking for diamonds. This abandoned town used to have everything from a ballroom to a hospital and even a bowling alley. It all started to decline somewhere in the late 1910s when another diamond-packed location was found nearby. So, most of the people living here moved, leaving everything behind in search of more money. Kolmanskop has since been slowly occupied by sand dunes, while the hot temperature and low moisture help to preserve the buildings. This ghost town is also available for visitors. If it sounds interesting, you can book a tour in the nearby town of Lüderitz. Another abandoned castle dominates the view in Krakow, a city in Italy. The whole village sits atop a cliff that's 1,312 feet high. The founders liked this location since they knew it would be easy to defend themselves from unwanted guests. But the castle, built in the 1300s, soon became overwhelmed by landslides and earthquakes. Even though it has no residents anymore, the medieval city often comes alive during the various local festivals that take place here in the summer months. The locals also offer tours and tell amazing stories about the location. One of the highlights of the tour is a statue that seemingly came out of nowhere and now lies in a body of water. Hidden away in the Montana mountains, Garnet Ghost Town tells the well-known American story of the West's gold rush. The town's history goes back to the 1890s when they found a lot of gold in the Nancy Hanks mine. During its glory days, Garnet had almost 1,000 residents. Even though it's in a relatively secluded location, it had saloons, hotels, stores, a school, and other features of a regular little town. In 1905, when most of the gold had already been taken away, most mines were left behind, so only a couple of hundred residents stayed in Garnet. The final straw came in 1912, when a fire damaged most of the town's buildings. So, by the 1940s, Garnet was completely abandoned. It soon became a hotspot for treasure hunters looking for furnishings and artifacts. That was until a preservation campaign started in the 1970s. It ended with the town being declared a historic district in 2010. To this day, Garnet is one of the best preserved ghost towns in the area. Hashima Island is another abandoned location that tells us that when people leave, nature takes over. This mysterious place was even featured in a James Bond movie because of its ghostly landscape. It used to be a well-known spot in Japan for undersea coal mines, as it was opened in 1881. In 1959, at its peak, there were over 5,000 people living here, including mine workers and their families. As soon as the mines started going dry, sometime in 1970, people started to slowly depart the island, leaving it completely abandoned in 3 months. Even though nobody lives there these days, there are a lot of tourists here that drop off to wander around the abandoned homes, swimming pools, stores, and factories. Another town that started with a mining company back in 1881 is Calico, California. People discovered the location was packed with silver, so it soon became home to over 500 silver mines and 3,000 residents. It used to feature hotels, general stores, restaurants, and a school. There was even a local newspaper printed here called the Calico Print. But by 1986, the town had become empty. One of the former locals decided to buy it and began its restoration, making it a registered historical landmark. It even has a museum of the Old West available for tourists. One of the most interesting attractions that were rebuilt is the 1-mile-long Calico and Odessa Railroad. It currently goes through the steep canyons and hills, and even passes the old mines and buildings north of Calico. Approximately 1/3 of the town is original, while the rest consists of newer buildings that are replicas meant to recreate the spirit of its past. If you're a fan of cars, you might have heard of Henry Ford as the famous American industrialist who founded the Ford Motor Company in 1903. But in 1927, he began working on another one of his ambitious dreams, Fordlandia. It was supposed to be a massive rubber plantation located near the Tapajos River in Brazil, since he needed a reliable source of rubber for his car tires and hoses. His vision was to design a town complete with swimming pools, a golf course, living bungalows, and even weekly square dancing sessions for the locals. This project was unfortunate to begin with, since the local rubber trees soon got infected with leaf fungus. Even though Henry Ford invested a staggering $20 million into this potential income source, the town failed to produce the needed rubber. He had nothing left to do but to sell it to Brazil in 1945, and soon it was completely abandoned. Many of its buildings are still standing, but have been taken over by the surrounding nature. You can still see curious tourists wandering through it to this day. During its glory days, Hampi was the second largest city in the world. Looking at its ruins today, it's hard to imagine this Indian city used to be filled with temples and bazaars, and that it served as an important center of the Mauryan Empire in the 14th and 15th centuries. It was destroyed in the 16th century, but it still has beautifully preserved forts and markets. It became part of the UNESCO World Heritage in 1986, aiming to protect its buildings, such as the Lotus Mahal, a stone structure that was carved to resemble a lotus flower opening to the sun. A tourist village was constructed back in 1920 along the shore of Epicuén, a salt lake about 370 miles southwest of Buenos Aires in Argentina. It was designed to provide people with a busy city life a breath of fresh air near the restorative salt waters of the nearby lake. It was soon equipped with a railroad station and ended up having a population of more than 5,000 residents. The project was also destined to fail soon enough, as the unusual amount of rain at that time caused Lake Epicuén to swell. In 1985, the water took over the local dam, and the town was flooded. The waters were so deep that they even reached a depth of 33 feet in 1993. They only began to recede in 2009 and left behind the remaining buildings, literally encrusted in salt. No one came back to the town except for Pablo Novak, who returned here back in 2012 and was the only resident of Villa Epicuén at the time.
Tunnels, metro, underground systems, and even secret passageways to the houses of the rich and famous. Why else do we need tunnels, you may wonder? To hide. Many cities have underground tunnels and even underground doppelgangers. Now let's make it clear. Those passages are normally not connected, contrary to the popular rumor claiming that it was possible to get from Scotland to Turkey using underground passageways built around 5,000 years ago. I mean, it sounds insane even today. Imagine building it back in the day. These tunnels have an official name, the Erdstall Tunnels, and they were most likely built in the Middle Ages. However, we still don't have the exact information about the date. The highest concentration of those tunnels are in Bavaria, Germany, but there are many of them in Great Britain and France too. Erdstall tunnels, a unique type of earthen passage found globally, are characterized by their narrow, oval-shaped corridors and tight choke points, known as schlups. or slip-outs. Despite speculation, their purpose remains a mystery. However, some of those tunnels have fireplaces and even vents, which might mean those were used primarily for shelter. Dating back to the Middle Ages, possibly as early as the 12th century, Ötztal tunnels lack archaeological signs and historical records, so it's not a surprise that there are many rumors about their use. Some scientists are sure those were storage spaces, though their narrowness makes this impractical. Another idea is that they provided hiding spots for farmers during tribal raids. However, their single entry point raises doubts about their effectiveness in evading threats. Now, if you're feeling like Indiana Jones and want to venture into those tunnels, you're in luck. A few structures, like the Ötztal Radkobluken in Austria, welcome visitors to explore these enigmatic structures. Most of them are closed to the public eye, though. The origins of Ötztal tunnels remain largely unknown, just like their real functions. And if you think, hey, it's the 21st century here, we can study pretty much everything, well, you're wrong. What makes these tunnels hard to study are the tight confines. Traditional surveying methods often prove inadequate in such spaces. To solve this problem, scientists use a handheld device that integrates an RGB camera, a gyroscope, and high-resolution depth sensors, allowing them to capture intricate details of the tunnels. They also use modern techniques like 3D surveying in hopes of uncovering the true origins and purposes of those tunnels. One hypothesis even suggests they may have been poorly conceived dwellings, abandoned when their inadequacies became apparent. Still, not everyone quite agrees with this idea. Other theories suggest they served spiritual purposes, while the most intriguing idea speculates that those tunnels may be remnants of extraterrestrial civilizations. Experts believe they may have been used for practical matters, such as granaries or hiding spots from looters. As we don't have exact info on who built it and when, it may be pretty much anyone, even a sloth. Nope, I'm not a lunatic. Sloths can build giant tunnels. Check this out. In 2009, a farmer in southern Brazil was driving his tractor through a cornfield when it suddenly sank into the ground. He quickly discovered he had broken through the top of an underground tunnel. When researchers came to investigate, they found a tunnel around 6.5 feet high and the same 6.5 feet wide, extending about 50 feet long right beneath the farmer's house. When they looked closer, they instantly saw deep claw marks on the walls. That was the proof the tunnel wasn't human-made. So that thing the farmer uncovered was a megafauna paleoburrow, a prehistoric tunnel dug by ancient creatures like giant ground sloths or giant armadillos from over 10,000 years ago. I know, it's hard to imagine those beasts, but let me help you. Take a hamster. Now, increase it to the size of an elephant. Don't forget, this 13-foot-tall hamster could also walk on two legs. During their time, around 15 million to 10,000 years ago, many species of sloths and giant armadillos roamed the Americas, some even digging similar tunnels. Today, many of these tunnels are filled with sediment, though some remain clear, similar to the one the farmer discovered. This 2009 find sparked significant interest, leading to the discovery of over 1,500 paleoburrows across southern Brazil, making it the era with the highest concentration of such sites worldwide. But no one knows exactly why there are so many of them in southern Brazil. While some paleoburrows exist throughout South America, none have been found in North America, which is weird since those huge sloths roamed the entire continent. The exact purpose of these large tunnels remains a mystery, but scientists believe they may have served as nursing spaces, temperature regulation, or hibernation areas. Tunnels likely developed over centuries as successive generations of sloths and armadillos expanded them. Now, let's take a look at fugus. No, not the Japanese fatal delicacy, and no, not a town in New Guinea. To see them, we gotta travel to the UK. So fugus are underground structures too, but they don't look exactly like tunnels. They are dry stone structures. They look as if a cave had been decorated with stones from the inside. There are only around 15 of them found so far, and most of them are located in Cornwall. According to the estimates, those tunnels were built about 2,400 years ago, and they're still in pristine condition, which is truly fascinating. I mean, back in the day, people had no cool machinery whatsoever, yet their structures still last. And if you dare to buy an apartment today, well, chances are you won't be too happy about the quality. Going back to our fugus, there's nothing extraordinary about their supposed purpose. They could be used for spiritual purposes, as a place to hide, or a food storage. The latest application, though, is a bit weird. I guess it's not a secret for anyone that England is famous for its excessive humidity. And if you want to store your food properly, you gotta avoid the humidity at all costs. Otherwise, say welcome to mold and fungi. But ancient people weren't dull-witted at all, or they wouldn't have survived, and you and I wouldn't be around now. So they might have adapted those fugus to store just some products, those that already had natural molds in them, assisting in the preservation of perishable food, like milk, butter, and cheese. But hey, those are just speculations. The true reason why they were built remains unknown. What makes fugus unique is that they are intentionally built tunnels, not just excavated mines like those in Wales. They were crafted by digging deep trenches, lining them with stone slabs, covering them with capstones, and then filling over them, all of which took significant time and effort. Still, no matter how hard those were to construct, cities around the globe are often built over intricate tunnel systems, each unique to its location. For instance, Paris is famous for its extensive underground quarries, which were abandoned years ago, but still pose a risk of collapse in certain areas above. London boasts one of the largest tunnel networks in the world, including many that were specifically created for military purposes. In New York City, there are rumors of secret tunnels, while Los Angeles has old tunnels from the Prohibition era used for speakeasies. Many other cities also have their share of enigmatic tunnels, and surprisingly, Florida is no exception. It happened in the year 2011 in Ybor City. Near a former post office, flooding uncovered something weird, a section of an unknown structure. Back then, people didn't pay much attention to that, so it took another 7 years to discover something truly fascinating. This historic neighborhood was founded in the 1880s, but it remained unknown until 2018 that it also has a hidden tunnel network. We only learned of it because of renovation work. The exact purpose, of course, is unknown, but most scientists are pretty sure that they serve to connect to early gaming spots and the port of Tampa. Figuring out how extensive the tunnel network is tricky. In 2018, a historic home in Seminole Heights revealed locked doors leading to tunnels from the 1920s. One local even said he traveled through a tunnel for 20 minutes. Rumors suggest some tunnels connect to the Hillsborough River and Ybor City. Research is ongoing, but no new info has emerged yet.
It was a fine summer day in July 1518 in the beautiful city of Strasbourg in Alsace, part of modern-day France. Our mysterious story began with a woman named Trophia. As the tale goes, at one point, out of the blue, she went out into the street and began to dance. The problem was, it didn't seem like she enjoyed dancing. She didn't even have any music playing in the background. It looked more like a series of uncontrolled twists and turns. So, what made this woman behave in such a strange way? More so, why did so many people follow in her footsteps in the following days and weeks? That small group of people that initially gathered around Trophia kept on dancing outdoors despite the scorching heat. They moved their arms wildly and swayed their bodies even as their clothes began to get drenched with sweat. They danced through the night and into the next day. Despite their exhaustion, hunger, thirst, and pain in their feet, They continued to dance for days without stopping. As time passed, more and more people joined in the dance. At one point, it was estimated that hundreds of people were participating, all moving in the same frenzied manner. Now, just so we're clear, this was not a typical club rave we're used to these days. People looked like they were moving without their consent. The dancing continued even as some of the people started collapsing in front of the horrified onlookers. Authorities had to step in at one point, surely, but they couldn't explain why this bizarre dancing phenomenon occurred in the first place. To this day, we've yet to discover the nature of this mysterious event, which lasted about 3 months in total. We can't look at the facts, though. For starters, even the local physicians back then didn't really have any idea what was going on. Most of them were stumped and could only explain it as the result of a thing they called hot blood. They thought it was somewhat similar to a fever. Ooh, could this have been the ancestor of disco fever? Hardly. These days, with all the available technology and information, it doesn't make any sense at all. Fever alone doesn't make people dance. Physicians and local authorities thought that the best and only way to cure this behavior was for the individuals to dance until this fever, this urge, simply disappeared. Locals even set up a stage and brought professional dancers along with a band to provide music. The strange episode finally ended in September when the dancers were taken to a mountaintop in hopes they could request help from some sort of higher spirits that could end their misery. Weirdly enough, similar events took place in Switzerland, Germany, and the Netherlands, even before this event, but none were as large or as serious as the one in 1518. Years after the incident, Paracelsus, a physician, wrote a series of books on this dancing condition after the incident in Strasbourg. He was pretty famous for his work on using chemistry in medicine. He believed that this behavior was not caused by bad luck or unnatural forces, but instead by something in people's bodies that gave them a ticklish feeling. This is what affected their judgment and caused the movements. He basically said that the people had an extreme case of tickles. Some scientists have claimed over the years that the dancing frenzy was caused by some sort of food people may have eaten, which could have made them sick. Some of them have even suggested that the culprit might have been a fungus called ergot. This fungus grows on grains used for baking bread and has a chemical that can seriously affect people's judgment. Others don't believe this to be possible because people can't dance for days just because of their exposure to the fungus. Also, not everyone would have reacted the same way. The outbreaks of uncontrollable dancing happened in areas with different climates and crops, too. It's highly unlikely that this fungus would have been present in all these locations. Another theory was suggested by John Waller, an American medical historian, who thought the dancing phenomenon of 1518 was caused by something much simpler, people being very stressed out. He pointed out that these types of behavior could happen when people were under a lot of pressure. As a result, they start to believe in scary things and behave in unusual ways. If we look at the information we have from back in the day, in all fairness, people in Strasbourg had a lot to worry about. If the weather was bad, their crops were affected, so food was often scarce. Waller also suggested that people were pretty superstitious too. The locals in Strasbourg believed that if they didn't make a certain higher spirit happy, they would be forced to dance to pay for their disobedience. Perhaps we'll never know the true reason why people suddenly started dancing that day under the hot summer sun. It doesn't mean the story hasn't influenced literature. Uncontrollable dancing had a captivating effect on those who saw it. This idea is also shown in the famous fairy tale called The Red Shoes, written by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen. The story mentions a special pair of red shoes that forced the wearer to dance until they simply couldn't handle it anymore. Sure, this story had another meaning altogether, to warn against vanity. But it also suggests that dancing may become problematic if done excessively. Should you ever find yourself on a dance floor filled with energetic people, it might be hard to stand still. You'll feel inclined to at least bounce from one foot to another from peer pressure, if not because of the music. Now, let's not forget, though, dancing can mean so much more. Music and dances are important parts of everyday life in many cultures around the world. And there is no other place on earth where dancing is more valued than in Africa. In these cultures, dances tell stories and are not just for fun. They talk about history, show emotions, and help bring people together. A lot of African tribes are famous for their dances, like the Maasai tribe of Tanzania and Kenya and the Zulu tribe of South Africa. In most African villages, everyone dances to the beat of drums, and the whole community joins in by singing and playing along. What's special about African culture is its polycentric dance. That means that different parts of a dancer's body move to different beats in the music. This makes it unique but complicated to learn and can take a long time to master. Even though different groups of people in Africa do this type of dance, there are still many differences between them. Another special type of dance takes us to a different continent altogether. It's called the haka, and it is a traditional Maori dance from New Zealand. It's performed by men, women, and children as a form of expression, challenge, or celebration. It can be accompanied by chanting and shouting, and it can be performed standing still or moving forward. Locals often perform it at significant events, such as weddings. It's known as a way to show strength, bravery, and unity, and can be used to intimidate opponents. It's so important to locals that it's become a pre-game ritual for the New Zealand national rugby team, the All Blacks. Not to mention, it's even protected by law. Asian traditions have special types of movements too. Kabuki, for instance, is a type of Japanese theater that includes both dancing and acting. It started in Kyoto in the 1600s, and these days it features only male actors. They play various characters in funny shows with naughty jokes. Over time, Kabuki became a 5-part performance that could be about Japanese history, family drama, or dance. The actors use special movements and faces painted with white powder and bright colors to show their emotions. The theater also has special effects, like hidden doors and a spinning stage, to make the show more exciting and keep the audience entertained for a whole day.
Let's take a walk down memory lane, back to the earliest days of human history when our ancestors walked the earth as nomadic tribes. Consider for a moment what life must have been like for those with impaired vision. For those lucky enough to have only minor sight issues, they could probably navigate their way around without too much difficulty. But for those with severe vision problems, the challenges were formidable. Their productivity and usefulness to their tribe could be greatly compromised, potentially leading to their abandonment. As we settled down and formed communities, the way we treated each other began to shift, and we started to look at those with severe sight issues with a bit more kindness and empathy. However, without the scientific knowledge that we have today, there was limited capacity to provide support. Before glasses were available, those with minor vision problems like nearsightedness were probably not that affected. While their vision impairments might have made certain tasks like hunting or spotting threats more difficult, these individuals could still contribute to the survival of their tribe and therefore were generally accepted by their peers. Over time, as vision progressively worsened, many people learned to adapt. The gradual decline in their eyesight over several years may not have even been noticeable to them, so they developed coping mechanisms, like relying more heavily on their other senses. It's also worth noting that precise vision wasn't as essential then as it is now. For a huge chunk of our history, literacy rates were low, often around 20% or less, and formal education was not essential for most jobs. As such, vision problems did not necessarily affect an individual's ability to work or learn. Most people were not expected to perform tasks that required exceptional eyesight. So, they could get by as long as they could carry out their tasks, which would often be in the form of physical work. It may seem harsh by today's standards, but if your sight was good enough to work on, say, a field, you could at least secure food and income. Fast forward to the 13th century, when the first glimmers of what we would recognize today as eyeglasses began to appear. These early versions of spectacles were fundamentally just magnifying glasses, only serving to help with reading tasks. As the centuries rolled by, glasses grew more complex and began to resemble what we recognize today around the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, let's look at the interesting history of eyeglasses for a bit. Their journey to completion took several centuries, dotted with countless visionaries and their inventive ideas. However, the mystery behind who invented wearable glasses remains unsolved. We do know that our ancient friends, the Romans, were the first ones to unravel the magic of glass and its power to magnify tiny text, giving birth to mini magnifying glasses. Fast forward to Italy in the 13th century, where we meet the earliest wearable glasses in recorded history. These had rudimentary lenses crafted by skilled glassblowers, which were popped into frames made of wood, leather, or sometimes even animal horn, and held up to the face or balanced on the nose. As the tech improved during the Renaissance, these contraptions became more common. How do we know these glasses existed, you ask? Well, thanks to art. Paintings from the early Renaissance period often portray scholars with handheld frames or eyeglasses perched on their noses. Based on rudimentary vision tests, the Italian glassblowers fashioned lenses of varying thicknesses. As their popularity soared, these eyeglasses began their journey from Italy to the rest of Europe, becoming a luxury accessory available to those who could afford them. Given the importance placed on knowledge during the Renaissance, glasses became badges of intellectual prowess and wealth. For a while, it looked like eyeglass technology had hit a plateau. The next significant leap forward didn't happen until the 1700s, when eyeglasses became hands-free with the introduction of temples that extended over the ears. One of the most notable examples of these modern glasses is the Martin's Margins, designed by inventor Benjamin Martin. Today, these glasses are highly sought after by collectors, but they were the trailblazers in the quest for more accurate and thinner lenses held together by robust frames. Once glasses graduated to being over the ear, their evolution seemed to pick up the pace. Even Benjamin Franklin contributed to this rapid development by inventing the bifocal lens, a nifty solution for those juggling near and far-sighted vision issues. He ingeniously sliced two lenses and merged them into one frame. Around the same time, scissor spectacles gained popularity. These were essentially pocket-friendly glasses, foldable like a pair of scissors, and perfect for those moments when you needed a quick peek at something important. Some gentlemen weren't thrilled about wearing glasses all the time, so these compact glasses were the perfect solution. As the 19th century arrived, eyeglasses were still handmade and not accessible to everyone. But thanks to the upcoming Industrial Revolution, mass production of both frames and lenses were on the horizon, making it easier for hardworking folks to correct their vision. The early 1800s also witnessed the introduction of unique cylindrical lenses designed to correct astigmatism. In the 20th century, eyeglasses began to morph from a vision necessity to a fashion accessory. An array of frames with different shapes, materials, and colors started flooding the market, allowing wearers to select glasses that complemented their face shape, eye color, or even their outfit. Take Theodore Roosevelt, for instance. He rocked glasses with no earpieces that stayed put with a nose clip. Although these fell out of style as they became associated with the older generation, they were quite the rage back in the day. The real game changer was the advent of sturdy plastics. Frames no longer had to rely on wood, metal, or horn. Plastic could be molded into an assortment of shapes and sizes. The 20th century was also when we witnessed the rise of sunglasses. While the idea was born in Asia during the 12th century, they were originally intended to mask the expressions of judges in court, not to improve vision or shield from the sun. Several manufacturers played around with colored lenses, but not for protective reasons. Soon enough, though, tinted sunglasses became popular for light sensitivity due to certain medical conditions. This trend caught on quickly, and by the end of the 1920s, sunglasses were being mass-produced not just for sun protection, but also to reduce glare. The 80s brought us plastic lenses, which were less prone to breaking and could be made lighter and thinner than their glass counterparts. And the innovation didn't stop there. Today, we have glasses with protective coatings that reduce glare and block harmful UV light. Fascinating as this may have been, another interesting discovery has to do with the percentage of people affected by vision issues. Some studies suggest that short-sightedness or myopia wasn't as widespread in the past as it is today. Truth is, we've seen a skyrocketing number of folks diagnosed with this condition. Projections even suggest that by 2050, every second person on the planet might be myopic. One particular study brought to light that myopia now impacts more than double the number of kids in the UK compared to the 60s. Also, in some parts of Asia, the situation is even more pronounced. While doctors and researchers worldwide are trying to figure out the root cause of this problem, some label it as nothing short of an epidemic. The theories are many, with some pointing the finger at genetics or the surge in time spent glued to screens and buried in books. But then there are other scientists who've noticed a link between children who play less outside and the likelihood of developing myopia. Regardless of what's fueling this situation, it's fair to say that myopia probably didn't impact as many folks in the days of old as it does today. The relatively recent invention of glasses for nearsightedness suggests that it wasn't such a pressing issue in the past. Maybe people found ways to adjust their lifestyles to manage their short-sightedness better? Or perhaps there was a greater emphasis on matching jobs to people's visual abilities instead of hunting for tech solutions to level the playing field.